Layla, I'm in trouble.
Layla heard her mother's voice break as she sat on the floor in tears. She'd thought it was all over, but it wasn't. Taewon was still angry and wanted revenge.
In one way or another, I will make them pay for what they cost you.
He said to Soa. Once again, for Ryo to protect his new family, he'd have to face his old one. Now, besties, I'll have to stop you here and take you right back to your favorite scene in part 1. Yes, you guessed right, the part where they kissed. So give me your hands and let me take you from the kiss right back to that phone call Celeste made to her daughter. Are you ready? Good. But before we go, if you've not watched part 1 yet, click the link above to watch it, because you wouldn't understand this part without hearing how this beautiful story started. Also, if this story already has you feeling excited, then you know what to do. Smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. Tell us where you are watching from in the comment section. And do not forget, click the link in the description below to join the waitlist for our free ebook, How to Attract a High-Value Man Without Chasing. Now, let us go. Layla had held him back. That was the thing he could not get past. He had been the one to pull away twice, because she was not a woman he wanted to handle carelessly. He knew she was not someone you leaned toward on impulse and then walked back from. Everything about her required intention, and he had wanted to be certain before he let himself get anywhere close to what he was feeling. So he had pulled away, and her hand had found his arm and held it. He had looked at her. She was not looking away. She was not performing anything. She was just standing there in her kitchen in her after-work clothes with the remnants of the evening service still in the air around them, holding his arm with her hand and looking at him the way she looked at things she had already decided upon. She brought him back to her. She kissed him first, just barely, just the press of her lips against his, and then she pulled back slightly and spoke against his mouth, her voice quiet and certain. "I'm not glass," she said. "I don't break." He understood what she was telling him. She was not fragile. She did not need protecting from what he felt. She was not going to shatter under the weight of it. And the way she had been these past weeks, cooking beside him, arguing with him about anchovy ratios, laughing at him when he said something too earnest that had meant something to her too. He did not need more than that. He brought her face to his with both hands and kissed her the way he had not allowed himself to imagine kissing her, without restraint, without the careful distance he had been maintaining since the first evening she had put a bowl in front of him without being asked. He kissed her the way a man kisses a woman when the waiting is finally over. The wait was worth it, and he is not sorry about either thing. He was madly in love with her. He was not sorry about that either. The office was different now. It was not a dramatic difference. There were no slammed doors, no raised voices, and no scene that anyone could point to. It was a quiet difference, the kind that sits in a room and refuses to leave. Soa came in, did what she came in to do, and left. She did not look at him longer than necessary. She did not laugh at anything. She did not stay. He had known Jang Soa for years. He knew the shape of her presence the way you know the furniture in a room you have lived in long enough, not consciously, but in the body, in the way you move through a space without thinking. And the absence of her was a thing he noticed every day. He had hurt her. He had not meant to, but he had, and he could not undo it. The version of their friendship that existed before that night in his apartment was gone. On the 4th day, she came in with a file for the following week's meeting, set it on the desk, and turned toward the door. "Soa." She stopped. She did not turn around. "Do you like this?" he said. "The way things are between us right now?" She said nothing. "We have been friends for years," he said. "I would like to understand how we arrived here." She turned. Her jaw was set in the way it's set when she was holding something back by force. "You were ready to destroy it," she said. "All of it. Everything we built. For that BL. Her name is Layla." Those 4 words landed in the room, flat and final. Soa's mouth closed. "Her name is Layla," he said again. Not louder, just again. "I would like you to use it." She looked at him for a long moment. Something moved behind her eyes, not softening. Something harder than that. "If Layla is enough reason for you to forget everything we have had," she said, "then I like exactly where we are." She turned back toward the door. "Why invest in her business?" he said. "If you could not stand the sight of her, why put your money behind her?" She stopped again. "Because I was willing to do everything," she said, "to get her far away from you." A pause. Her voice had the specific flatness of a person who has stopped managing what they let show. "The things I gave up, 13 years of being exactly what you needed, and all you wanted were women who had nothing." He sat with that. "I am sorry," he said. for not seeing how you felt. That is real, and I own it. But Layla had nothing to do with any of what happened between us. Nothing you feel about me is her fault. He held her gaze when she looked back. And I need you to speak about her with respect. That is not a request. Soa stood very still. He looked at her, this woman he had known since she was 18 years old, standing in a university corridor. He had known her as brilliant, loyal, and precise. He had not known this. I don't really know you anymore, Soa, he said quietly. You may leave my office. Close the door on your way out. She left. The door closed. He sat in the quiet of his office and looked at the city beyond his window sill, lit and indifferent, and going about its business. And he thought about how long a person can be beside you before you see them clearly. Weeks passed. Things between Layla and Ryo didn't really change much. He still came after his last meeting of the day, still loosened his collar at the door the way he always did, and still sat at the counter without being invited, because the counter had been his long enough that the invitation was no longer necessary. She still cooked. She still put a bowl in front of him without asking what he wanted because she already knew. The restaurant was still the place they were most themselves. The only thing that was different was that now, when she moved past him in the kitchen, she did not move past him. The way you move past someone, you are still figuring out. She moved past him the way you move past someone who is simply yours. There was no calculation in it, no awareness of the distance between them. Just the easy, unthinking closeness of two people who have stopped pretending they are not exactly where they want to be. He had started to notice things outside the restaurant that he wanted to show her. There was a market 3 streets over that ran on Saturday mornings, where a woman sold fermented paste that was close, not his mother's, as nothing would ever be his mother's, but close in a way that made him want to take Layla there and watch her taste it. There was a rooftop in Mapogu where you could see the Han River at night. There was a place, his favorite place, that he had never taken anyone. He mentioned it one evening. Her face changed. He had learned to read her face. It was not a face that gave things away easily. She had spent too many years managing what showed and what did not. But he had sat across from her at that counter enough times now that he could see the things she was not saying. You don't want us to be together outside this restaurant, he said. It was not an accusation, just what he had noticed. She was quiet. She had the look she had when she was deciding how to say something that did not have a clean way to be said. I don't want to be around your friends, she said finally. And your ex-girlfriend? Soa. A pause. That was what she was, wasn't she? Before everything? Learn. He did not look away. They were my friends. We are no longer friends, he said. What they did to you, I cannot forgive that. Not easily. But she still works in your office, Layla said. Her voice was level, not angry, just honest. So I suppose I will be uncomfortable there. He got up from his stool. He came around the counter to where she was standing at the stove, still holding the knife she had been working with. He reached over, took it from her hand gently, and set it down on the counter. He waited until she looked at him. Look at me, he said. She did. I love you, he said. I will drop anyone and everyone who does not respect you. I will fight every battle that comes with being with you. That is not a choice I am making, it has already been made. He watched something move across her face. What is funny? You sound incredibly cheesy right now, she said. The smile she was trying not to have was losing the fight. He laughed, a short, real laugh he did not see coming. Then, he settled back into what he meant to say. Soa is just a colleague, nothing more. If anyone has a problem with you, they go through me first. That is not negotiable. He pressed a kiss to her cheek. Come out with me. I want to show my girlfriend off, he said, still holding her. She could feel the blush because this was the first time he actually placed a label on it. She knew they were together, but they had never really said it out loud. She smiled at the thought of him being her boyfriend. She looked at him for a moment. Fine, she said. I will go out with you. He pulled her into a hug quick, tight. The hug of a man who knows he has just been given something and does not want to be theatrical about how much it means. This was right. Whatever else was uncertain in his life, this was right. He was not going to let anyone take it from him. He came to pick her up a week later. It was the first time he had been inside her apartment. He stood in the doorway and looked around the way you look when you are trying to understand someone through the space they have made for themselves. It was small, orderly, in the way of a person who had always had to be disciplined about space. A kitchen that was clearly used and clearly loved. A table by the window where she probably sat to do her accounting in the mornings. This will be too small for you and your brother, he said. He was not criticizing. He was already thinking about what to do about it. She looked at him with the expression she used when she was pretending to be annoyed. Says the billionaire to the struggling chef, she said. Is my space too small for you? You tease me a remarkable amount, he said, pulling her closer. I think I prefer the official Layla, he said, feigning a serious look. This one teases me too much. Would the official Layla dress up for you? She asked, pulling back to show him the dress she had on. He looked at her. He had seen her in her chef's whites, he had seen her in her closing up clothes, and he had seen her in the oversized things she wore on evenings when the restaurant was empty and she stopped managing how she looked. He had never seen her like this. She was extraordinary. He was not sure if it was the dress or if it was simply her, if any version of this woman in any configuration would stop him in exactly this way, and he decided it did not matter. I think, he said, I prefer this Layla after all. Good, she said, moving toward the door. Can we go? He followed her. He was already thinking about the apartment. Bigger, better neighborhood. Something with a proper second bedroom for when Stephen came. Something with a kitchen she could actually work in. He would mention it later, carefully. He just needed her to have what she deserved. They were walking, simply walking, the way people walk when they are early. The evening is agreeable, and there is no particular rush when a man approached him. He recognized the type immediately, the ease of someone who thought public figures existed for public consumption. He answered the questions about RY Group with the short, civil answers he had developed over years for exactly these situations, and all the while he was aware of Layla standing a few feet away, her arms crossed loosely, watching him with the expression she used when she found something quietly amusing. And the young lady? The man said, nodding toward her. He looked at her. She was looking back at him. That small smile, the one she did not always let show. She is Layla, he said. My girlfriend. He said it simply, without pause or performance. The way you state a fact about yourself that you are entirely at peace with. She looked away. He caught the end of the smile as she turned. He went to her. They left. He had not told her where they were going. He drove her across the city, past neighborhoods she knew and neighborhoods she did not, past the river in the dark, past the parts of Seoul that stayed themselves, no matter how much the rest of the city changed around them, and stopped on a street in Dongdaemun-gu. She looked around. It was the kind of street that built up gradually small shops, old apartment buildings, and the permanent smell of food from stalls that had been on these corners since before either of them was born. Nothing about it announced itself. He took her hand. They walked toward a small space at the end of the block. It had a door and a window and a light on inside, and from the outside, it looked like a very small gallery of some kind. He pushed the door open. She stepped inside. It took her a moment to understand what she was looking at. Photographs. All of them were photographs. A woman small, Korean, the kind of beautiful that had nothing to do with youth, and everything to do with the quality of the face behind it at a street food kiosk, at different ages, in different seasons. Always at the same kiosk, always in the same apron, always with the same expression of absolute at-homeness that Layla recognized, the way you recognize something that lives in your own body. A boy on an overturned crate, 6 years old, 8, 12, doing homework, in the fluorescent light, while his mother worked 3 feet away. Layla knew that boy. She used to cook in a kiosk in this place, Ryu said. His voice was quiet, in the way it went quiet when he was talking about something that mattered too much for volume. Right here. This exact spot. He was standing in front of an old photograph, the kiosk, as it had been, his mother at the counter, young and tired and alive. She would have loved you, he said. She had dreams the way you have dreams, not in spite of everything, but because of everything. Because nothing in her life gave her an easy reason to dream, but she did it anyway. He reached up and touched the frame. She had no funding, no branding. No one to tell her that what she made was extraordinary, even though it was. She used every extra one she had to put me through school. Every single one. Layla did not speak. She was looking at the photographs at the woman's face across the years, watching the tiredness accumulate and the warmth stay constant, watching the boy on the crate grow taller until the photographs stopped. Someone bought this place, Ryu said, to expand a game center. She had no ownership. She had been operating on the goodwill of the government for years because there was no money left for rent. When the person bought the place, he told her she couldn't cook here anymore. She had to go. He paused. I was 23. I had the idea of my company in my head and almost nothing else. I wanted to do something. But I couldn't afford to. Money made her lose this place, and now the money is so small to me that I wondered how that little amount could possibly have removed my mother from her kiosk. A tear came down his cheek. He did not wipe it away. Her health started going after that, he said. I watched the stress take from her, and I could not stop it. I could not give her what she needed when she needed it. His voice was breaking now, not loudly, just the small fractures of a man speaking about something he had kept very carefully private for a very long time. She died the year after I started the company, before I had anything, before I could give her anything. He brought down a photograph from the wall, the two of them, him perhaps 9 years old, her laughing at something off frame, the kiosk behind them in the early morning light. I bought this space 2 years after she died, he said. I could afford it by then. I turned it into this. He looked around. She deserved somewhere that said she had been here, that what she made mattered, that someone remembered. Layla was crying. She had not planned to, but she was standing in a room that a man had built for his late mother out of love and grief and the particular ache of a person who arrived too late, and there was no other response available to her. She crossed the space between them. She wrapped both arms around him and held on. She would be so proud of you, she said into his shoulder. She gave you everything she had, and you became everything she deserved. That is not nothing. That is everything. She felt him breathe. She pulled back to look at his face. His eyes were wet. His jaw was the jaw of a man holding himself together by force of will that had limits. She looked at him, and the words that came out of her mouth were not planned. I love you, Ryu. She heard them leave her, and felt the surprise of them in her own chest, the way a truth surprises you, when it has been there long enough that saying it out loud is simply the last step of something already finished. He looked at her. His face moved through something she could not fully name, the shock of a man who had known what he felt and had not allowed himself to assume she felt the same, confronted with the fact that she did. He kissed her. He kissed her while he was still crying and smiling at the same time, and neither of those things were things he had ever done in his life, yet both of them felt completely right. He pulled back and wiped the tear from her cheek with his thumb. I love you too, Layla, he said against her lips. They stood together in the small museum he had built for his mother on a back street of Dongdaemun-gu, and neither of them knew yet that outside in the city, a man with a camera phone was already uploading what he had seen on the street earlier that evening, and that by morning, the question of who Ryu Sewon loved would be the most discussed topic in Seoul. The notification arrived on both their phones at the same time. They were in the car on the way back, her head against his shoulder, the comfortable silence of two people who have just said something real to each other and do not need to fill the space after it. She looked at her screen. He looked at his. The photograph was clear. The two of them on the street earlier, him looking at her, in that unguarded way, he had not known he was being photographed in. The headline was the kind that publications write when they have limited information and are counting on curiosity to compensate. Korean billionaire and mystery woman. Within an hour, there were 15 versions of it. Some called her his girlfriend accurate. Some called her his fiancé premature. Some focused on the fact that she was black, because certain publications had decided that was the angle worth running, the fact that required explanation. Some talked about the chemistry. One headline cited a source who claimed they had been watching A Man in Love and compared it pointedly to every photograph of Ryu that had ever existed, in which Soa appeared in the background. She looked at him with shock. He was looking at his phone with the expression of a man who was not surprised by the world's appetite for commentary on who he was with. He reached over and took her hand. She looked at him. He held her gaze. He did not apologize. He did not perform reassurance. He just looked at her with the steady certainty of a man who had made a decision and was not revisiting it. Her chin lifted slightly. She put her phone away. Soa saw it at 11 in the evening. Soa had been home since 8. She had changed out of her work clothes, made tea she had not drunk, and sat at her kitchen table with the apartment around her and the quiet that had been sitting in her chest since the night in the elevator. The notification appeared. She looked at it. She looked at it for a long time. He was looking at that woman the way she had spent 13 years waiting for him to look at her with the full, open, unmanaged expression of a man who was not hiding anything about what he felt because it had not occurred to him to hide it. The way you look when there is no performance required, because the feeling is simply there and simply true. She had never once seen him look at her that way. She put the phone down. She picked it up. She started crying, the kind of crying that your body does when it has been holding something at a particular tension for too long, and the tension finally breaks. She sat at the kitchen table and cried in the quiet of her apartment, with Seoul going about its business outside the window. The front door opened. Taewon came in and stopped when he saw her. He saw the picture on her phone on the table. "How many times?" he said not unkindly, in the voice he only used with her. "Are you going to do this over this man?" He sat down beside her. "She took him from me," Soa said when she could. "Everything I sacrificed. She did not take him," Taewon said. He said it with the directness of a man who had run out of patience for the soft version. "He chose her. You are angry at the wrong person." He stood. "You have to accept that sometimes the person you love does not love you back the same way. That is the only truth in this." He moved toward the door. He stopped. "And one way or another," he said, his voice dropping into the register it went to when he was not performing anything, when he was his father's son and his family's heir, and the thing that had always been underneath the easy exterior, "I will make them pay for what they cost you." He left. Soa sat at the table with the photograph still on her phone. She did not disagree with him. "Now tell me, don't you think Ryu and Layla are the cutest couple in existence? Because that's exactly what I think. Also, tell us what you think about the story so far. Do you think Soa deserved better, or did she bring all of this on herself? Tell us in the comment section. We love reading your thoughts. But don't forget to brace yourself for the twists and turns, because you know how we tell our stories. We always have twists and turns. Now don't forget to smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Let us get back to the story. Layla called Steven from the restaurant that evening after service. At the counter, the space she turned to when things happened that she needed to say out loud to someone who had known her long enough to hear what she meant under what she said. "Give me the gist," he said immediately. No greeting. She had been feeding him updates about this man for weeks, and he had been tracking the evolution of her certainty with the attention of someone who had spent his whole life reading his sister. "I told him I loved him," she said. The satisfying silence of a person receiving information that confirms what they already knew. "You are already in love?" he said. "Sis. And he wants you to come," she said. The naturalness of it surprised even her how quickly his being here had become something she expected rather than hoped for. "He even told me to find a bigger apartment for when you arrive." Quiet on the line. "I would not want to come because of him," Steven said. He was being careful, the carefulness of a person who has learned that things that feel too good to be true need to be examined from all angles. "What if things don't work out? Would I be a burden?" "Come here first," she said. "Then we can get you a job. I want you here, Steven. I have wanted you here since the day I landed. If things don't work out with him, we will sort ourselves out the way we always have." She paused. "And I trust him." She said the last part quietly, almost to herself. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes," she found her voice properly. "He is different from anyone I have met. He came from nothing, and he was able to build everything. I don't know. I really relate to him." A breath on the other end. "Layla, if you trust him, then I trust you," he said. She breathed in. "Then you're coming to see me, little bro?" she said. "I am not that little anymore, sis," he said. She laughed. They talked for a long time after that, the way they talked, when there was nothing and everything to say, and the distance between them made both of those things more present. He told her he needed to sort a few things first. She told him to take his time, but he was coming. Her brother was coming to Seoul. Then there was the Seoul cooking competition coming up. It ran once every 5 years in Korea, open to any chef working in the country, judged blind, invitation, by application only. The kind of thing that did not need to advertise itself because its reputation was enough. Ryu's mother had wanted to enter it. She had saved toward the application fee 3 years in a row, and each time something else took the money before she could submit. When Layla found out the next competition was coming, she felt the specific pull of something that was meant for her. Not in a mystical way, but in the way of a woman who had spent her entire cooking life reaching for something she could feel, but had not yet named, and who recognized it when it appeared. She paid the fee herself. She submitted the application herself. She told Ryu, after it was done, "I want to do this on my own, win or lose," she said simply. "The entry, the preparation, what happens at the competition, this one is mine." He had looked at her for a moment, then nodded. She knew it cost him something, this man who had the ability to smooth every path she walked, and who wanted to use that ability, but he put it away. That was the kind of man he was. The morning the acceptance came, she ran to his office. She pushed his door open. He was reading a file. She stood in the doorway. "I got in," she said. He was on his feet before she finished saying it. He crossed the room and lifted her, just lifted her, the way happiness makes you do things without planning them, and she was laughing, and he was laughing. He set her down. He looked at her face, flushed, bright. and fully alive. He was so happy because his mother had wanted this. The thing that Layla had just walked through that door carrying. His mother had saved toward an application fee 3 times in a row, and those 3 times, something else had taken the money before she could submit. She had never stood in a doorway like this one. She had never gotten to know what it felt like to be chosen by something she had worked toward. Layla had. He held her and let her laugh, and he did not say any of that, because there was no way to say it that did not sound like he was making her moment about something else, but he felt it. He felt it the way he felt everything that had to do with his mother, quietly, privately, in the part of him that he did not take out in public. She had gotten there, and watching her get there was the closest he had ever come to giving his mother something. The Jang family and the Shin family gathered on a Saturday afternoon in a Gangnam venue, chosen for its discretion. 2 families agreeing on paper to something arranged without the principal party's preference. Jang Tae-won, 31 years old, and heir to a name that carried more weight than he had ever chosen to carry, stood in the center of it, wearing the expression of a man performing a role he had not auditioned for. His bride-to-be, Shin Si-hoon, was a composed young woman with her father's jaw and her own quiet intelligence, who was clearly doing exactly what he was doing, getting through the afternoon with as much grace as possible. It was Soa who saw her first. She was working the room the way she always worked, a room systematically, socially, and with the practiced ease of a woman who had grown up in a family that required you to manage what you let show. She was halfway across the space when she stopped. There was a black woman on Taejin Shin's arm. Not young, late 40s, perhaps early 50s, the age that arrives on a woman differently depending on what her years have cost her. Brown skin, warm and deep, long hair, and a face that Soa had probably seen in a surveillance photograph. Younger, and standing in a restaurant kitchen across an ocean. Soa moved toward her. "You look remarkably like a friend of mine," she said, her smile arranged into something welcoming. The woman looked at her with the mildly amused expression of someone who had spent a long time being the only person who looked like herself in rooms like this one. "You have friends who look like me?" she said. "I am usually the only one." "I am Soa Jang. Nice to meet you," Soa said, bowing slightly. "Celeste Shin," the woman replied, bowing in return. "The resemblance is really something," Soa said. "Do you have a daughter?" Celeste's expression shifted small and inward, a thought arriving from somewhere that cost her something to visit. "I have kids," she said, "but they are not in Seoul." "Kids?" Soa asked. "Yes." Something moved across Celeste's face, the particular expression of a woman who has learned to answer this question without letting it cost her too much in public. "My girl is Layla. My boy is Steven. They are in the United States." She almost smiled. "So they could not possibly be your friends." She turned to move past. "Layla Monroe," Soa said. Celeste stopped. The name landed differently when someone else said it. It always did. But hearing it here, in this room, in this city, from the mouth of a Korean woman she had met 4 minutes ago, was something her body registered before her mind did. She turned back slowly. "Excuse me?" she said. "My friend's name is Layla Monroe," Soa said pleasantly. "You look so much like her." "That is my daughter's name," Celeste said, her voice going somewhere distant. And in Soa's head, behind the pleasant face, an idea that had no shape yet began to find one. She crossed the room to where Taewon was standing with Sehun, touched his arm lightly, and excused them both with the smooth ease of a woman who had been managing rooms her whole life. She turned him toward Celeste. "See that woman?" she said. "The black woman, on your father-in-law's arm." Taewon looked. "Who is she?" he said. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." She paused just long enough. "That is Layla's mother." Taewon went still. He looked at Celeste again, really looked this time. The way you look when you are trying to confirm something, rather than simply see it. The resemblance was there once you knew to look for it. The jaw, the way she held herself. "How do you know?" he said. "She told me herself," Soa said. A million thoughts moved across Taewon's face. Then the wedding introduction pulled at him from across the room, and he straightened. "Let's finish this first," he said. "Then we talk." That night, after the guests had gone, Taewon sat with Sehun in the quiet of a room that was supposed to mark the beginning of something, but felt mostly like the end of a long day. She was not what he had expected, not that he had spent much time expecting anything. This was an arrangement his father had made, and he had arrived at it the way you arrive, at things you did not choose. She kicked off her heels and sat back and looked at the ceiling. "Your stepmother," he said after a while. She seemed tired this evening. Sehun looked at him. She is always tired, she said. Funny how she was hyper when she married my dad. I think she came to Seoul believing my father was one kind of man, and found out too late he was another. She pulled her knees slightly up. He even told us she was not a good mother, that she left her children in America without a second thought when he asked her to. He says it like it proves something about her character. She was quiet for a moment. I just pity her, though. I see her crying when she thinks nobody is watching. She came here wanting a better life, and got something worse than what she left. She looked happy enough tonight, Taewon said. Sehun looked at him with the expression of someone who has grown up watching a particular performance for long enough to know exactly what it costs. When you are with a man like my father, she said, you either put up a smile or you lose your teeth. She looked back at the ceiling. She still has her teeth. I guess she made her choice. Taewon said nothing. He was not listening to the words anymore. He was listening to the shape of the information underneath them. A woman trapped in a marriage she could not leave, who had abandoned her children and spent years regretting it. That was not a problem. In the right hands, that was everything he needed. The seed Soa had planted at the wedding introduction did not need watering. It watered itself. Celeste had gone home that evening and sat in the room she shared with Taejin, and she had not slept. Not because of him, though his presence in that room was its own kind of weight, but because of what the woman had said, that her daughter was in Seoul. That Layla had been in this city, on these streets, building something in the same air that Celeste had been breathing for years, and had never once looked for her. And why would she? Celeste knew exactly why she would not. She lay in the dark and thought about Layla when she had last seen her. She was still about 9 years old. She thought about Layla's beautiful, innocent eyes, and she thought about what those eyes must look like now, what they must have seen, what they must have had to become in order to survive everything Celeste had left them with. She could not sleep. She did not sleep the second night either. By the third morning, she had found Soa's number through the Shin family contacts. She held the phone for a long time before she dialed. She told herself it was for Layla, that she just wanted to know her daughter was all right, that the call was about making sure the child she had left was not suffering somewhere in this city. But the truth was that the guilt was eating her up, and she needed to know that her daughter was doing well. Soa suggested coffee. Her voice on the phone was warm and unhurried, the voice of a woman who had been expecting this call and was not going to let that show. They met in a small cafe in a part of Seoul that belonged to neither of their worlds. Unremarkable, easy to forget, the kind of place that does not ask questions about who you are or what you are doing there. Soa was already seated when Celeste arrived, already composed, already the precise version of herself she had chosen for this particular morning. She was warm but not effusive, interested but not desperate, the expression of a woman who had nothing to gain from this conversation and simply wanted to help. Celeste sat down. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. She asked about Layla, and Soa answered everything. She told her about the restaurant, without giving her the name of it, to ensure she didn't know where to find her daughter. She told her about how Layla had built it from nothing and how she had paid for every inch of it herself. Celeste sat very still while she listened. She was trying not to let it show what it cost her to sit in a cafe in Seoul and hear a stranger describe the daughter she had left years ago as a woman who had built a life that anyone would be proud to have built. She was trying to hold her face in the composed way she had learned to hold it in this city, the composure that had become structural after years of needing it. She was not entirely succeeding. She sounds so much like what she was when she was little, Celeste said when Soa paused. She said it quietly, almost to herself. I can remember how she always made something, even if it wasn't the best, always trying to make it better. Soa looked at her. She gets that from somewhere, she said simply. Celeste looked at her coffee cup. I mentioned to Layla once, she said, her voice going careful, that I had met someone who looked remarkably like her. I did not say your name. I just said, I think I may have met your mother. She looked at the table. She went very quiet. And then she said, my mother is dead to me. I do not have a mother. The cafe went very small. Celeste did not move. She did not reach for her cup. She did not adjust her posture, or look away, or do any of the things a person does when they are managing what a thing costs them. She just sat there and received it. Because she deserved it. She had always known she deserved it. And knowing a thing, and hearing it spoken out loud in a cafe in Seoul by a woman who had sat across from her daughter and heard those words come out of her daughter's mouth, those were two very different experiences of the same truth. I know, Celeste said. Her voice was even. She had learned to keep her voice even. She is right. Soa looked at her. She is happy, though, she said, and she said it gently, with the warmth of someone who understood that the next thing needed to be something survivable. She has built something real here. She is in love with someone who is good to her. She is exactly who she was always going to be. Celeste looked up. My brother and I have actually been thinking, Soa said, her voice staying gentle and easy, nothing that could be pointed to as anything other than kindness, about trying to help Layla bring her brother, Stephen, here. She misses him more than she says. She has always missed him. She tilted her head. If there were a way to encourage him to come to reach out to him, let him know he is wanted here, it would mean everything to her. A pause, light as a hand placed briefly on a shoulder. And if that encouragement came from you, from his mother, well, it would not fix everything, but it would be a start. It would be something real you had done for her. Celeste sat with that. She paid for her coffee. She thanked Soa. She walked out of the cafe into the sole afternoon, and she stood on the pavement for a moment before she moved. She thought about the words Soa had used. A start. She went home. She thought about nothing else for 2 weeks. There was a gala in Seoul for the elites. The gala was the kind of Seoul event that existed to remind everyone in the room of their position relative to everyone else. A charity function in name, a social arrangement in practice. Held in a venue in Gangnam that had been chosen for exactly the impression it made upon entering. Taejin Shin attended these things. He attended all things that confirmed his standing. He brought Celeste on his arm the way he brought everything that belonged to him, as an extension of himself, a detail in the picture he was presenting to the room. She wore what he had chosen. She stood where he placed her. She smiled when the occasion required smiling, and was quiet when the occasion required silence. She had learned the rhythms of this a long time ago. Soa and Taewon were there. Soa had known they would be there. She had checked the guest list 3 days prior, found the Shin family name on it, and said nothing to Taewon until the morning of the event. Soa saw Celeste within the first 10 minutes of arriving. She was standing at the edge of a conversation Taejin was having with 2 men, whose business she was not part of, standing there the way she always stood at these events, present, composed, and very far away inside herself. Soa watched her for a moment, then she crossed the room. She approached Celeste the way you approach someone you have already had coffee with, warmly, naturally, and with the ease of a relationship that already exists and does not need to announce itself. I did not know you would be here, she said, and she said it with genuine sounding pleasure, the pleasure of running into someone unexpectedly at an event you were both required to attend. Celeste looked at her. There was a moment, just a moment, where something careful moved across her face. Then it settled. Soa, she said. I did not know either. They stood together near the window. They talked for a while about nothing in particular. Then Soa said quietly, just between the two of them, just underneath the noise of the room, have you thought about bringing your children together? Celeste looked at her wine glass. She said nothing. She did not push. She understood timing, understood that the worst thing you could do with a woman like Celeste was push. She had built the relationship carefully over coffee, and she was not going to damage it now by being too eager. Then Taewon appeared. He came to stand beside them with the easy familiarity of a man who was now family. Celeste, he said warmly, I am glad you came tonight. Celeste looked at him. Jang Taewon, she said, your sister was just keeping me company. She is good at that. My sister told me about your situation with her friend, Layla. Is it? He said. His voice had dropped. She told me how all the time she was with her friend Layla, she'd always talk about her little brother. So we just think helping her plan it will be the best gift for her, he said calmly. The truth was that Soa and Taewon didn't know anything for certain, but one thing they had learned from surveilling Layla was that she was in Seoul alone. Celeste stood with all of that. She should have known something was not right. And I heard about how Taejin treats you. We can help you leave Seoul, to leave the marriage. Honestly, I don't know Layla personally, but my sister is so fond of her, Taewon said, looking at Soa with a smile. This is something you should want for yourself and your children, he finally said, stepping away. If you're interested in this, meet us in the restroom in 25 minutes, Taewon said quietly. We can speak properly there. He moved back into the room. Celeste stood at the window. She counted the minutes. She told herself she was only going to listen. At 24 minutes, she set her wine glass down on the nearest surface and walked toward the restroom. They were already there. Taewon had his jacket on and his arms crossed. Soa stood beside him, and her face had changed, not dramatically, just slightly. The warmth was still there, but it had settled into something underneath it, something that had always been there and was no longer working quite as hard to stay hidden. Taewon spoke first. He told her about the resources, the documents, the money, and the safe place to go. He spoke about Taejin's connections and what it would take to navigate around them without triggering them. He made it sound manageable. He made it sound like something that could happen soon. Soa spoke next. She talked about Layla, about how much it would mean, and about the beginning it could be. She used the word start the way she had used it over coffee, carefully and specifically, knowing exactly what that word did to a woman who had spent years without one. You would not want to disappear without seeing your children first, Taewon said, without having the chance to explain yourself. You do not want to leave them a second time without saying goodbye. The restroom was very quiet. What can I do? She said. Taewon told her they needed her to tell her son to come to Seoul. They would take care of the funding and getting her son's contact information, but nothing would motivate him more than his mother. Celeste knew something was wrong, but that ability to make rash decisions was not past her yet. She had done it years ago, and she was about to do it again. Why can't you simply ask my daughter? Celeste said. The question came out before she had decided to ask it. I mean, it's a surprise for Layla, Soa said. Her voice had returned to the warmth of the cafe. And bringing Stephen to Seoul will be one way to repair your relationship with your daughter and your son. Celeste looked at them both and, because she had always had poor judgment, she agreed. She wanted what they promised her. She wanted out of that marriage. She wanted to stand in front of her children and have done one thing right. She walked out of the restroom and back into the gala and found Taejin exactly where she had left him, still talking, still unaware that anything had happened, and she stood beside him and smiled the smile. She had learned to smile and said nothing at all. They met in a parking garage on a Wednesday afternoon. Celeste had told Taejin she had a medical appointment. She had dressed carefully, nothing that would draw attention, nothing that said she had somewhere to be. Soa and Taewon were already there beside a black car. They had gotten Stephen's contact information the way people like them got things, without needing to explain how. Soa held the phone. The screen lit up on the second ring. Stephen Monroe. Celeste almost did not breathe. His face filled the screen, and she felt it in her chest before she felt it anywhere else. Her ex-husband's frame, her own warmth in his face, the boy she had left when he was 7 years old. Now a grown man, looking back at her from a phone in a parking garage in Seoul. Mum? He said. Just that word. Just that one word, and she was already gone. Yes, baby, she said. She started crying before she could stop herself. She did what she had been told. She told him to keep the conversation between them because Layla was very angry with her, that Layla was still angry and did not know she was calling. She told him she had made a mistake and wanted to fix it. She asked him to come to Seoul. Let us surprise Layla, she said. Please. Stephen went quiet. She waited. I am already coming to Seoul, he said. His voice was calm, confused, and careful. Layla's friend has already booked a flight for me. I am leaving. She ended the call. She looked up. Soa and Taewon were both smiling. Her hands had started shaking. If you were really her friends, Celeste said, you would have known he was already coming. Taewon laughed. It was the laugh of a man who had stopped pretending entirely, who had been waiting for exactly this moment, and found it even more satisfying than he had expected. You gave us everything we needed, he said. We don't need to know when he's coming. We'll get him regardless. He picked up the things they had come with. You are not very smart, are you? Your daughter is lucky she did not get your brains. He started toward the car. And you, he said, turning back one last time. When I am done with all of this, I will tell your husband you begged strangers to help you run away from him. So, do yourself a favor and stay very quiet. They got in the car and left. They did not touch her. Taejin was mafia, and even Taewon understood the code. You did not harm another man's property, unless you wanted a war you had not planned for. Celeste was not worth that complication. Stephen, however, was a nobody, and a nobody brother going missing was exactly the kind of thing that would break Layla Monroe completely. The garage echoed after the car was gone. Celeste stood in the silence of it. The sound of Stephen's voice on the screen, the sound of Taewon's laugh, and the feeling of having made the same kind of mistake for the second time in her life, letting want override everything her instincts had been telling her since. She had done this before. She had wanted something that felt too good to be true, and she had walked toward it anyway, and the people she loved had paid the price. She pressed her hands against her face. Then she took them away. Her fate was her own to carry. Her son's did not have to be. She took out her phone and started searching. She searched for an hour. Black chefs in Seoul, female restaurant owners, anything that might give her a face to attach to a name. Seoul had 100 restaurants for every block, and no particular reason to make itself easy to search. Then she stumbled upon a headline from searching, Korean billionaire and black girlfriend. She clicked it, and there was her daughter, 15 years older. Beautiful in a way that had deepened and settled into itself, the jaw Layla had taken from her, the lashes, the eyes that looked right through a camera, the way they had always looked right through everything. Standing next to a Korean man who was looking at her the way Celeste had wanted to be looked at when she was Layla's age, and making the decisions she made. She looked at the photograph for a long time. She found the restaurant in the article. She found the number. She held the phone. She put it down. She picked it up. She held it again. Then she dialed. Layla. Her own voice came out broken, more broken than she had intended. But there was no hiding what the last 2 hours had cost her. It's your mum. It's Celeste. There was silence on the other end. Then, Mum? Her daughter's voice. 24 years old and cautious, and underneath all of it, still the voice of the child she had left, the one who had figured out how to survive without her. The one who had done it so completely that she had built a life worth photographing on the front page of a Seoul news article. Celeste's throat closed. Layla, I'm in trouble. She ended the call. She could not do it. She did not have the right to walk back into her daughter's life through a call that began with, I put your brother in danger. I was foolish. I am sorry. Her phone rang. What trouble are you in, Mum? Layla said. Her voice was steady, waiting. Celeste breathed, and then she told her. All of it. The wedding introduction, Soa, the coffee, the gala, the restroom, the garage, the FaceTime call, and what Taewon had said when Stephen told them he was already coming. She told Layla that Stephen was in danger, that she had put him there, and that sorry was not enough. But she was telling her everything because maybe there was still time. When she finished, there was silence. The silence of someone arranging too many pieces at once. I'm sorry, Celeste said. I know I have no right to ask you to believe that, but I am. The call ended. She sat in the empty garage alone. She had done the only thing left available to her. She did not know if it was enough. She did not know if any of it would ever be enough. Layla was on the pavement outside her restaurant when he arrived. He had been across the city when her call came in. No words, just crying. The raw, unmanaged kind that does not perform itself. The sound of someone who has had the ground taken out from under them mid-step. He was in his car in 4 minutes. He did not call back. He just drove. He found her exactly where the call had sounded like she was, on the pavement outside her restaurant, back against the wall, knees pulled up, coat still on from closing, and the phone loose in her hand as if she had forgotten she was holding it. He sat down beside her on the cold pavement. Not in front of her, not standing over her, beside her, on the ground. He did not say anything. He let her lean against him and he let her cry, and he did not try to move any of it along. He just sat there with Seoul, going about its business around them, and his back against the cold wall of her restaurant, and her weight against his side, and he let the crying be what it needed to be. When it quieted, she told him. He listened without interrupting. He kept his face still while she talked the practiced stillness of a man who is processing information, calculating what needs to happen next, and has learned how to do both without letting either show. He heard everything. He sat with all of it. We need to cancel his flight, Layla said. Her voice had gone steady in the way voices go steady when the crying is done, and the practical part of the mind takes back over. He cannot come here. Not now. He does not need to cancel his flight, Ryu said. She looked at him. I will go to the airport myself, he said, with my driver and my security. I will be there the moment his plane lands, and he will not be alone for a single minute in this city. Not one. End quote. Ryu. Listen to me. He lifted her chin. Not forcefully, just enough to make the eye contact he needed her to have. You have your cooking competition tomorrow, the one you entered yourself, the one you planned for alone, the one that belongs entirely to you. Remember? He held her gaze. I need you to walk into that kitchen tomorrow and be everything you are, everything you have always been. Can you do that? What I need, she said, is to know my family is safe. Stephen is my family too, he said it quietly, with the weight of a man who meant it and was not saying it to comfort her. Your family is my family. He is going to be my brother-in-law soon. Do you understand what that means to me? Do you understand how seriously I take that? He held her gaze until she held his back. Leave this to me. I am asking you to leave this to me. She looked at him for a long time. She looked at him the way she looked at things. She was deciding whether to trust, searching for the condition underneath, for the thing that the offer was actually costing, for the angle she had learned to always look for. She did not find one. She breathed. He helped her up from the pavement and walked her to the car. He drove her to his apartment, took her coat, put her to bed, and sat in the kitchen with the city outside the window until the sound of her breathing through the bedroom door went slow and even. Then he took out his phone. He sat there for a moment before he dialed in the quiet of his own kitchen. With the city outside the window and the woman he loved asleep on the other side of a door, and he thought about what he was about to ask a 22-year-old boy to do. He thought about whether there was another way. He had been thinking about whether there was another way ever since, and he had not found one. Taewon did not respond to warnings. He had already proven that. The document fraud, the plotting, and going as far as kidnapping a man like that did not stop because you asked him to. He stopped because you gave him no choice. This was the only way to give him no choice. Ryu dialed. Steven picked up on the second ring. "Someone is going to try to hurt you," Ryu said. "I know who, and I know how, and I need you to let them." He explained the plan. He kept it direct and did not soften anything. The tracker, the recorder, the act of pretending not to know, and the police contacts he had already called. Steven needed to understand exactly what he was agreeing to, not a version of it, all of it. Steven was quiet for a moment. "Tell me about the tracker," he said. He told him everything, what to buy at the airport before he boarded, where to put it, how to act when they came for him, and how to make the fear sound real because, at some point, it would become real. He told him that the recorder needed to capture everything. "Your sister will be at her cooking competition while this is happening," Ryu said. "I don't want to stress her with this now, because I want her to be her best tomorrow." There was a pause on the line. "Will I be there to watch her, at least?" Steven said. "Yes," Ryu said. "You will probably toward the end of the competition." After a while, he hung up. He thought about Layla asleep on the other side of the door. He thought about how he was going to stand beside her tomorrow morning and send her into that competition without telling her what was happening. The morning came gray and early. She had not slept well, but she had slept, and that was something, because the version of Layla who had not slept at all was not the version that needed to walk into a competition hall this morning. She was quiet getting ready. He was quiet making coffee. They moved around each other in the kitchen, the way they had learned to move around each other, without collision, without explanation. The ease of two people who had spent enough mornings together that the silences between them had stopped needing to be filled. He drove her there. He pulled up outside the competition hall and kept the engine running. She did not move immediately. She sat with her hands in her lap and looked at the building through the windshield at the doors, at the people moving in and out, at the shape of the morning that had arrived and was not going to wait for her to be ready. He looked at her. "This one is yours," he said. "Go be what you are." She kissed him. Not long, just real. The kiss of a woman who is afraid and is choosing to walk toward the thing she has worked for anyway, which was the bravest thing he had ever watched anyone do. She picked up her bag. She went inside. He watched the door close behind her. He sat in the car for a moment after. Then he pulled out his phone. He called his police contact and told him to be on alert. He suspected there would be a kidnapping. Then he drove a small car to the airport. Steven's flight landed at 11:45. Ryu parked on the upper level of the arrival's car park and waited. He watched the arrival's doors on his phone through the airport's public camera feed and waited with the particular stillness of a man who has set something in motion and cannot do anything now except let it move. The doors opened. Stephen Monroe walked through them. He had the easy, unhurried walk of someone who had been told exactly what to expect and had decided to be calm about it. He was pulling one bag. He looked around the arrivals hall, the way someone looks around when they are finding their bearings, not nervous. Ryu watched. A man in a dark jacket crossed the hall toward Stephen and reached for his bag. Stephen looked at him. "Are you Ryu's driver?" he said. "Yes," the man said. "He is waiting." And then Taewon and Soa came through the crowd. Taewon, with his hands in his pockets, and the easy confidence of a man who had never once walked into a room he did not already own. Soa, a half step behind him. Taewon, both of them moving towards Stephen, the way people move towards something they have already decided belongs to them. Taewon extended his hand. "We are his friends," he said, warm and unhurried. "Welcome to Seoul." Stephen looked at him. He looked at his hand. He shook it. He smiled. He followed them to the car. Ryu pulled out of the car park 2 levels above and stayed 3 cars behind. The tracking signal was a small moving dot on his phone screen, moving south through the airport, exit roads, and then east onto the expressway. He kept his eyes on the road and the dot at the same time and did not close the gap. close enough to see them, far enough not to be noticed by them. He listened through his phone's speaker to the live audio feed coming from the recorder on Steven's body. He could hear the car interior. Taiwan's voice, still warm, still easy, asking Steven about the flight, about Queens, and about how long he planned to stay in Seoul. It was the performance of a man who was comfortable in the role because he had always been comfortable in every role he chose. Steven answered. His voice was steady. Ryu had told him to let the conversation be ordinary, for as long as it stayed ordinary. 20 minutes passed. The dot moved off the expressway and into the Eastern District warehouse roads, industrial streets, the part of the city that had been built for the movement of goods and not people. The kind of location chosen because it was far from foot traffic and close to exit routes. Ryu's jaw tightened. He made the call. Now, he said to the police contact, Eastern District, Seongdong-gu. I will send you the exact location in 30 seconds. He kept driving. Then Taewon's voice changed. It happened the way a mask comes off. The warmth dropped out of it completely. The ease went with it. What was underneath was what had always been underneath, cold and deliberate and entirely certain of itself. End of the road, Taewon said. Silence in the car. Then Steven's voice. What? A pause. Real. Unmanaged. This isn't the address of the cooking competition. That's because we have no intention of taking you to the cooking competition. Then where am I? Steven said now, getting scared at the way the place looked and the cold look on everyone's face. Somewhere quiet, Taewon said. Your sister will spend the rest of her life looking for you, and she will know what real pain and loss are. And she will know because we will make sure she knows that her own mother handed you to us. He paused. Tell me, does that not feel like justice? Let me go, Steven said. His voice had gone tight. Please, let me go. I haven't done anything to you. Please. You've done enough by having a man-stealing sister like Layla, Soa, who had been quiet, finally snapped back. Steven's voice rose. He shouted. He asked them to stop the car and let him out, but they did not. He begged, and his voice cracked, genuinely cracked, the way it does when fear becomes larger than the performance. And Ryu was gripping the steering wheel with both hands, not breathing properly, and telling himself that this was the plan, that this was exactly what they needed, that the fear was real, and the recorder was capturing every word, and this was going to be enough to put them away. He told himself all of that, and he pressed his foot harder on the accelerator. I have the exact location, he said into the phone. Go now. Block every exit. The police vehicles were already there when he arrived. 3 cars across the warehouse entrance, lights cutting through the gray morning, officers moving fast, and with the organized certainty of people who have been given clear information and know what they are walking into. Taewon's driver had barely registered what was happening before the car was surrounded. Ryu parked behind the police line and got out. He walked forward. He watched them pull Taewon out of the car, watched his face in the moment of it. The moment when a man who has never truly been held accountable for anything in his life understands that accountability does not ask permission before it arrives. Taewon's face went through something in that moment that Ryu would not forget. Not fear, exactly. Something closer to the look of a man discovering for the first time that the world does not, in fact, arrange itself around him. Soa was still in the back seat. She did not move. She did not look up. She sat with her hands in her lap, and her face turned slightly away, and she held herself the way she had always held herself, composed and contained, except that the composure now had nowhere to go, and nothing underneath it. Ryu did not look at her for long. He stopped in front of Taewon. The handcuffs were already on. Taewon looked at him. Something moved through his expression, the beginning of something he wanted to say, the instinct of a man who had always had a response available. Ryu did not give him the space for it. I told you, he said, quiet, even, the voice he used when a thing was already finished. You mess with her. You go through me. He turned. He walked past the police vehicles to where Steven was standing by the far car, a blanket around his shoulders that an officer had given him, his bag on the ground beside him, and his jaw set in the way it set when he was holding himself together by decision rather than by ease. He was shaking slightly. His hands. He was holding them still, but they were shaking. Ryu put his hand on his shoulder. Steven looked at him. He did not say anything for a moment. He just looked at him, with the expression of a young man who has just done something genuinely frightening, has come out the other side, and is still working out what it cost him. Is she winning? He said. Ryu looked at him. He thought about Layla in that competition hall right now, in her chef's coat at her station, cooking from everything she had ever been, not knowing any of this had happened, not knowing her brother was standing in a warehouse district in the eastern part of Seoul, wrapped in a blanket and shaking. "Let us go find out," he said. He picked up Stephen's bag. They got in the car. The competition hall, on the other hand, was larger than Layla had expected. A formal kitchen space set up for 20 competitors, with identical stations and judges, seated at a long table at the far end of the room. There were other chefs, a range of nationalities and ages, some who had competed before and some who had not. She found her station. She put on her coat, and she cooked. She did not think about the judges. She did not think about the other stations, or the sounds of a competitive kitchen that were different from the sounds of her own. She cooked the way she cooked when she was alone in her kitchen after closing. From everything she had ever been, they came in through the side entrance of the competition hall. The results were being announced. Ryu found them a place at the back of the room, and they stood there, he and Stephen, side by side, and the room was quiet in the way. Rooms go quiet when something is about to be made official, and everyone is holding the moment before it lands. He found her immediately. She was standing at her station, still in her chef's coat, hands at her sides, face held in the stillness she used when something required everything she had, and she was giving it. The judge at the front of the room read the name, her name. Ryu watched it arrive on her from across the room, watched her receive it the way she received everything that mattered, without noise, without performance, just the full weight of it landing somewhere inside her that was not visible from the outside. She closed her eyes. She stood there with her eyes closed and let everything that had made her who she was today become present. The little girl who didn't give up, the teenager who became a mother too quickly, her love for making a new dish, and the moment she stepped into Seoul. She thought about everything that led to this day. Then she opened her eyes. She turned. She found him first, standing at the back of the room, with his hands in his pockets, watching her the way he watched everything about her, with the full attention of a man who has decided that this woman is worth every single thing she has ever cost him. Then her eyes moved. She saw Stephen, beside him, wrapped in a borrowed jacket Ryu had given him from the car, his cap not on straight the way it was never on straight. His smile, not the easy one he used in conversation, but the other one, the real one, the one that meant something had happened, the way it was supposed to happen. The stillness broke. She crossed the room without being aware of crossing it. She moved the way you move when the body is faster than the mind, when something you have been waiting for has arrived, and all the waiting collapses at once. She hit her brother like a wave. She held him, her arms around him, her face pressed into his shoulder. And he was taller than her, and solid in the way he had not been when she left, and she held him the way she had held him on a Queen's pavement at 14 years old, with everything between them that did not need words. He held her back. "You won, sis," he said, into the top of her head. She laughed, still crying, both at once. She pulled back to look at his face. His smile was the real one. "He is a keeper," Stephen said quietly, tilting his head toward where Ryu was standing a little apart, giving them the space this moment required, watching her with the expression he had when he was glad about something and did not need to say so. "I told you," she whispered. She pulled back from her brother and went to him. She kissed him in the middle of the competition hall, judges still milling around, other chefs still present, and not one part of her cared about any of it. She kissed him the way you kiss someone when you have just won something, and you want them to know they are part of it. "I love you," she said against his lips. "Thank you." He pulled back. Something shifted in his face. The warmth stayed, but something else came into it. The expression of a man who has been carrying something and has arrived at the moment where he can no longer carry it alone. "I need to tell you something," he said. She looked at him. "Tell me," she said. He told her. He told her about the phone call to Stephen the night before. He told her about the tracker and the recorder and asking a 20-year-old boy to walk into a kidnapping on purpose. He told her everything. And he watched her face change. "You used my brother as bait," she said. It wasn't a question. It was just the fact of it, spoken out loud, in the voice she used when she was past anger and into something colder and more final. "Layla, I am not a child." Stephen stepped forward. His voice was steady, not performing steadiness, just having it, the way he always had it when things required it. "He called me. He explained everything, and I mean everything. The risk, the plan, what could go wrong, and I agreed. He looked at his sister directly. Because I am not a child. And because if we had not ended this properly today, they would have come for you again, next week, next month. They were never going to stop." He paused. "They used our mother, Layla. You know that." She said nothing. That does not mean he should have lied to me, she said finally. She was looking at Ryu now. You looked me in the eye this morning. You drove me here. You said you were going to keep him safe. Her jaw was set. And the whole time, Ryu said, I was terrified. He said it quietly, without defense. I was terrified that the plan would not hold, that something would go wrong that I had not accounted for, that I would have to call you out of that hall and tell you. He stopped and started again. If I had told you the truth last night, you would not have slept. You would have spent this morning in that kitchen, not cooking. You would have been on the other side of the city in your head the entire time, and you would not have won. He reached for her hand, not taking it, just reaching. I did not lie to you because it was easy. I lied to you because I could not think of another way to protect both things at once. You and him. And there was no decision that wouldn't have cost us something. I'm sorry I lied. She looked at him. She looked at her brother. Stephen lifted one shoulder, the shrug she had known her whole life, the one that meant he had already processed his half of this, and was waiting for her to catch up. She looked back at Ryu. She looked at him for a long time. The anger was still there. She was not pretending it was not. But underneath it, sitting quietly beneath everything her face was doing, was the knowledge she had held since that night outside her restaurant, that this man was going to do everything for her. In fact, he had done so much for her already. I am sorry too, she said after a long moment, for not being easy to tell the truth to. He exhaled, and Layla hugged him, and they stared at each other intently. I mean, Stephen said, looking between them with the expression of a man who has been standing very patiently in the middle of a moment that does not include him. You both should get a room at some point, but what do I know? She laughed. It came out sudden and real, and broke the last of the weight in the room entirely. She laughed and reached for her brother with one arm, and leaned into Ryu with the other, standing there between them in the middle of the competition hall, with her trophy and her family around her, while Seoul outside the windows went about its ordinary business, completely unaware of everything it had taken to arrive at this exact moment. She was standing with her trophy in her hands. The hall had mostly emptied, and Ryu looked at her. He looked at her, the way he had looked at her, at the counter, at the memorial, and in every kitchen they had stood in together with the open, unmanaged expression of a man who had nothing left to hide about what he felt and had stopped trying. Ryu didn't know why, but he knew it was at this point that he decided he wanted and needed to spend the rest of his life with her. Seeing her laugh, watching her celebrate, all he could think was how much more he wanted to see this. He went down on one knee. Layla's hands tightened on the trophy. I don't have a ring, he said. I did not plan this. But your family is here, and you just won, and I am more in love with you than I know how to say properly. I do not want to wait for a better moment, because this is already the best moment. Stephen stood very still beside her. His chin was up. His eyes were bright. Layla Monroe. Ryu looked up at her. Make me the happiest man in the world. Marry me. He reached up and pulled the ring from his own finger, the one he had worn for years, plain and simple. Bought the first month. His company turned real revenue. The ring that said this is real, and held it toward her. It would be too large for her finger. He wore it on her anyway. She put it on, and the tears came down her face. The good kind. The full kind. The kind that have been waiting for a moment worthy of them. Of course I would marry you, she said. He was on his feet and she was in his arms, and she was laughing and crying at the same time. And behind them, Stephen was nodding at the ceiling with the quiet satisfaction of a man who has known for a long time how this was going to go. She told Stephen that night about Celeste. She told him about the call, what their mother had done, and what she had done to fix it. A woman who had made very bad decisions in her life, had spent years paying for them, and was now trying imperfectly, too late, and with whatever tools she had left to undo some of the damage. Stephen sat with it. She told me you didn't forgive her, he said. They lied to her, Layla said. All of it. She looked at the ring loose on her finger, already being resized in her head. I want to go see her, she said. Celeste Shin's home was a mansion in a part of Seoul that money had built and maintained, the kind that communicated wealth from the gate and kept communicating it all the way to the door. Ryu came with them. It was because of Ryu that Taejin Shin agreed to receive them at all, even though he knew Ryu Sewon was the reason his son-in-law was arrested and was about to be tried for kidnapping. The housekeeper let them in. Celeste was in the sitting room. She stood when they came in the door, stood and then stopped, her hands at her sides, as if she was not certain she had the right to move toward them. Layla looked at her mother's face. It was the face she had been looking at in the mirror her whole life. The jaw, the cheekbones, and the particular quality of the eyes. She had always known that she had inherited her mother's face entirely. She had not understood, until this moment, what it would feel like to stand across a room from the face you see every day in a mirror and have it be someone else, someone who had been alive somewhere in this city while she was building her life in it, someone who had been 15 minutes away on a good traffic day. Celeste was thinner than she should have been. Her face held the composed expression of a woman who had learned to keep things composed regardless of what was happening underneath. And on her left wrist, at the edge of her sleeve, there was a bruise, faded but present, the kind that came from a hand. Layla crossed the room. She crossed it without thinking about what she would say, or whether the anger that had lived in her chest since she was 9 years old would make it across the room with her, or stay behind. She stopped in front of her mother. Celeste was not breathing. Layla looked at her face, really looked, the way she had told Ryu she would want to look if she ever found her. She wanted to see how she had aged, to see if she looked like her, and to know if the woman was still in there. She was. "Hi, Mum," Layla said. Celeste's face broke. It broke the way faces break when the thing they have been bracing against for a very long time finally arrives, and there is nothing left to hold against it. She pressed her hands to her mouth, her shoulders hunched. Layla put her arms around her. She held her mother in a sitting room in a Seoul mansion and felt the woman shake, small, terrible shaking, the shaking of 15 years of kept composure, releasing at once, and she held on. She was the one doing the holding this time. She was not 9 years old anymore. She was 24, and she had built her own restaurant, and she had won a competition, and she had a man who loved her, and a brother who was standing in the doorway, with his hands in his pockets and his face turned slightly away. Because he was not going to cry in front of anyone. He was absolutely crying. "I am so sorry," Celeste said. "I am so sorry." "I know," Layla said. "I know." She pulled back and looked at her mother's face. "You made a mistake," she said. "People make mistakes. What matters is that when it counted, you tried to fix it. You put yourself at risk to protect Stephen. That matters." Celeste looked at her daughter. "You are nothing like me," she said. "I literally look like you," Layla said with a smile. Stephen came across the room then and stood beside his sister, and Celeste looked at him, her son, who was now a man, who had grown up without her, and she reached for his hand, and he let her take it. They stood there, the three of them, in the quiet of that room. Not fixed, not everything resolved, but present, together in the same space for the first time in years, which was the only beginning available to them, and which was, for now, enough. She told him that night. They were at his apartment, her and Ryu and Stephen, the three of them coming down from everything the day had been, and she waited until Stephen had gone to the guest room before she said anything. She did not want to say it in front of him. Not yet. He had already carried enough for one day. She told Ryu about the wrist. She had noticed it when she hugged her mother. The way Celeste's arm had moved slightly wrong when Layla pulled her close. The small, contained wince that Celeste had tried to cover before it showed. When Celeste's sleeve shifted during their conversation, she had seen the mark on her wrist faded, but there, the particular yellow-green of a bruise that was old enough to be fading and recent enough to still be visible. And above it, older still, was another one. She told him all of that. "She is not safe there," Layla said. Ryu sat with it. He did not say anything that night. He did not make promises or plans out loud. He just listened, sat with it, and looked at the city outside the window. The way he looked at things he was deciding what to do about. He said goodnight. In the morning he went to the police station before Layla was awake. He filed the domestic violence report himself, the address and the dates as best as could be established, along with a request for a welfare check and a review of whatever CCTV footage the property had. He spoke to the officer in the flat, even tone of a man who was not asking for a favor, but making sure a process was started and would not be quietly set aside. The welfare check happened within 48 hours. The CCTV footage from inside the Shin mansion told a story that did not require interpretation, repeated, and documented. It was the kind of evidence that made the case straightforward in a way that left very little room for the kind of quiet management that men like Taejin Shin were accustomed to applying to their problems. He was arrested on a Thursday morning. He was released on bail by Thursday afternoon. The case entered the system and began moving through it. Ryu went to the mansion on Friday. He was shown into a study that communicated its owner's opinion of himself in every detail. The furniture, the artwork, and the arrangement of the room designed to make the person sitting across from you feel the distance between you. Taejin Shin sat behind his desk, with the composed expression of a man who had been in difficult rooms before and had always come out of them the way he intended. Ryu sat down. He looked at the man across from him at the hands that had put marks on Celeste Monroe's arms. at the face of a person who had looked at a woman who was already running from one life and had decided to make her second one worse than her first. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "I want to tell you something," he said. His tone was conversational, the tone of a man sharing information that he considers straightforward and wants to make sure is understood. There was a man recently who believed his family name and his connections put him beyond the reach of consequences. He believed that the world he had built around himself would hold. A pause. It did not hold. He is looking at 20 years. His sister is looking at 20 years. "I brought down everything their family had built in this city, and I did it in a single afternoon." He held Tajin's gaze without effort. "My family now includes Celeste Monroe. And from today, she is a free woman, no plotting, and no planning. That is not a negotiation, and it is not a request." He let that sit for a moment. He stood. He straightened his jacket. He walked out of the study and through the corridor and out of the front door of the Shin mansion without looking back at any of it. He called Layla from the car. "It is done," he said. "She's safe." Jang Taewon and Jang Soa, as Ryu predicted, were sentenced to 20 years for kidnapping with intent to cause harm. The recording was the centerpiece of the case, Taewon's own voice, in a car on the way to a location he had chosen, saying the things he had said about Stephen and Layla and what he intended for both of them. 20 years. Soa sat in the courtroom and did not look at anyone. She had spent 12 years building a life around a man who had never once looked at her the way he looked at a woman he had known for less than a year. She had given up her family's world for a closeness that had turned out to be entirely one-sided. And in the end, she had left all of it, not with the man she wanted, but with a courtroom and a sentence, and the quiet company of the choices she had made. Ryu did not attend the sentencing. He had said everything he needed to say in the parking lot when Taewon was being handcuffed. He thought about Soa sometimes. He did not fully stop thinking about her for a long time. He thought about who she had been when they were 20 years old. Sharp, loyal, and brilliant, and what she had let herself become, and how much of it he had not seen because he had not been looking. He did not think it helped anyone to keep thinking about it. So at some point he stopped. He arranged two things before the wedding. He called a contact at a cybersecurity firm in Mapo-gu, a small, serious company doing work he respected, and arranged for them to meet Stephen for coffee. Stephen walked in as a person they were curious about, and walked out with a position that would let him study and work at the same time. He called Layla afterward, and pretended to be casual about it for approximately 20 seconds before abandoning the performance entirely. He gave Celeste Monroe a home, a two-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of Mapo-gu, close enough to Layla's restaurant that the walk between them was possible on a good day. He put it in her name. He told her it was hers regardless of what happened between her and her children, or how any of it resolved. "You do not owe me anything for this," he told her. "You just have to learn to do better, to be a better mother to your children, who love you." Celeste looked at him for a long time. "My daughter chose well," she said. The call came 3 weeks before the wedding. She had not reached out to her father. She had thought about him the way she always thought about him, with the complicated warmth of someone who loved a man who had cost her a great deal, but she did not know what to say to him. She was not sure the words existed. He called her. "I heard you're getting married," he said. His voice was older. She had last heard it when she was 14 years old. "I am," she said. "Layla." He stopped and started again. "Your brother told me everything. He had been telling me everything for a while now. I have had a lot of years to sit with what kind of man I was and what I owe you." She did not speak. "I am not asking to be forgiven," he said. "That is not what this call is. I would like to see you get married, if you will let me. I would like to be in the room." She held the phone. "You can walk me down the aisle, Dad," she said. There was silence on the line. She needed a new start. She wanted to believe her parents deserved second chances. "Layla," he said, just her name. "Come to Seoul, Dad," she said. They got married on a Saturday morning in early spring. The venue was in Mapo-gu, not far from the neighborhood where her restaurant was. The room was full of white flowers, and the specific quality of light that only exists in Seoul in spring. The guests were not many, because neither of them was a person who needed a large crowd. Stephen was there. Celeste was there. Mina, who had stood in a restaurant and taken every insult without breaking, and who had been Layla's first and most loyal employee, was there. Ryu's colleagues who had earned the right to be present were there, and Daniel Monroe was there. He had arrived in Seoul 4 days earlier. He was older than Layla had imagined. The years had accumulated on him in the way they accumulate on men who have spent time carrying things they could not put down. He was thinner and grayer, but when he walked through the door of Ryu's apartment, and saw her standing in the kitchen with a dish towel in her hand. The look on his face was the look she remembered. The look that said she was his daughter, and he knew it. She had held it together for about 4 seconds. Then she had gone to him. They had stood in Ryu's kitchen, and her father had held her, this man she had not been held by since she was 14 years old, whose absence had shaped so much of who she had become, whose love for her was real and had always been real, even when it had not been enough, and she had let herself be small in his arms for just a moment. Just a moment. Then she had straightened. "Come meet him," she said, and she had brought her father to meet the man she was going to marry. The morning of the wedding, she stood in a room with Celeste and Stephen while a woman finished the details of her dress. It was strange and right all at once. Her mother's hands adjusting her veil, her brother's voice teasing her about how long it was taking the 3 of them in a room together in Seoul, on a morning that none of them could have predicted. Her dress was ivory silk, beautiful and long, with a train that moved with her. She wore her hair down in the waves she almost never let out in public, and the gold hoops her grandmother had given her that she had carried from Queens to Seoul in the small zippered pocket of her backpack and never lost. She looked at herself in the mirror. She was ready. Her father was waiting at the door. He had put on a suit. He was not a man who wore suits. She had always known that about him, the same way she had always known everything about her father that was good and complicated and real, but he had put one on. And he had straightened the collar, the same way Stephen straightened his jacket collar, which was how she knew the habit was their father's and had been passed down to the son without anyone meaning to. He looked at her. His eyes went bright. He offered his arm. She took it. The doors opened. She walked into the room on her father's arm, and it was the walk she had been walking her whole life forward, straight-backed, eyes on what was ahead. But this time, she was not walking away from something. She was walking toward him. He was at the end of the aisle. Ryu Sewon, in a dark suit, was standing very still, watching her come toward him with the full, open expression of a man who was not hiding anything about what this moment cost him, and was not trying to. His eyes were wet before she was halfway down the aisle. She walked the full length of the room on her father's arm. At the front, Daniel Monroe placed his daughter's hand in the hand of the man who loved her. He looked at Ryu with the look of a man who understood exactly what he was giving and what he was asking in return. Ryu looked back with the look of a man who understood both equally. Daniel stepped back. She faced him and he faced her. They said what they meant. Not only the formal version, they said the things underneath it. About the counter, and the jjigae, and the woman who built a kiosk in Dongdaemun-gu, and the woman who built a kiosk in Mangwon-dong, and the fact that 2 people who had both grown up with nothing had found each other in a city that had no obligation to be kind to either of them and had built something anyway. She cried. She had planned not to, and she cried anyway, not from sadness or from relief alone, but from the full, accumulated weight of everything it had taken to arrive at this moment. Everything Queens had cost her. Everything Seoul had given her. And this man, who had sat at a counter in her restaurant and eaten her food and understood what it meant from the very first bowl, he wiped the tear from her cheek with his thumb, the way he always had. "I have been wanting to do that for a very long time," he said, quiet enough that only she could hear. She laughed. She kissed him. The room exhaled. Behind them, Stephen was looking at the ceiling in the way of someone who has decided the ceiling is very interesting and deserves close examination. Celeste was not hiding it at all. She sat in the front row with her hands folded in her lap and tears running freely down her face, and the expression of a woman who knew she did not deserve to be in this room and was here anyway and was grateful for every second of it. Daniel Monroe stood at the side of the room with his arms at his sides. He watched his daughter. He had not deserved to be here either. He was here. 3 years later, the restaurant had expanded. A second dining room, a kitchen she had designed herself, and a small private room in the back she kept for cooking experiments. And Sunday mornings when Ryu came in, sat at the counter, and waited for whatever she decided to make. She was at home on a Tuesday morning when it happened. He came downstairs still in his sleepwear, hair unmanaged, eyes only half awake. And she was standing at the kitchen counter with a cup of tea and a small rectangular piece of plastic she had been holding for 20 minutes. She held it out to him. He looked at it. He looked at her. He sat down on the kitchen floor. Not because his legs gave out, though it was close, but because the kitchen floor was where he ended up when he put his back against the counter and sat down slowly, in the way of a man who has just received information that he needs to be closer to the ground to process. She sat beside him. He looked at her. "A girl," she said. "I think." He looked at the ceiling. "My mother would have called her something long and beautiful," he said. "Tell me the name," she said. He told her. She tried it out. She tried it again. Yes, she said. He reached over and took her hand. They sat together on the kitchen floor of their home in Seoul, this city that had been his from the beginning and had become hers, where a woman from Queens had built a kitchen that people crossed the city to eat in, where a boy who had done his homework on a plastic crate had built an empire and then built something more important. And they sat there in the Tuesday morning, quiet, with everything they had survived, everything they had chosen, and everything that was coming. Their daughter, when she arrived, was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen. She did not know yet what it meant to be surrounded by people who had walked through fire and come out the other side choosing each other. She would learn. She had her whole life ahead of her, and she was never going to be alone in it. To everyone who stayed with us from the very beginning, from Queens, from the kiosk in Mangwon-dong, from the first bowl of doenjang jjigae, the kitchen door, and everything that followed, thank you. Tell us in the comments, what was the moment that moved you the most? Was it the memorial? Was it the reunion with Celeste? Was it Daniel walking her down the aisle? We want to know, because we write these stories for you, and we read every single comment. Smash that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We have more stories coming, and you do not want to miss a single one. And do not forget, click the link in the description below to join the waitlist for our free ebook, How to Attract a High-Value Man Without Chasing. We will see you in the next story.